When local resident Valerie Young was getting her doctorate at the University of Massachusetts Amherst as a first-generation student, she says she often felt like an imposter. Young, an author and frequent speaker, has become an expert on something known as imposter syndrome. I spoke with her about what imposter syndrome is, where it comes from, and the tools needed to overcome it.
Imposter syndrome is actually not a syndrome. It's just got popularly referred to that in the culture. But the imposter phenomena is something that a couple of psychologists discovered in the late 1970s, Pauline Clance and Suzanne Imes. And they found that a lot of people deep down feel like they're not as bright and capable and competent or talented as other people think they are. And they've somehow fooled other people or just been lucky or timing or computer error. And they're waiting to be found out.
And so they're secretly sort of thinking this constantly, like, I don't belong here, or I'm not good enough for this, or all of these other little messages that they're constantly sending themselves, right?
Absolutely.
When did you first hear of that phrase attached to this set of feelings or these things that people are thinking about?
Yeah, I was actually 21 years old. I was a graduate student at UMass, the same university where my mom was working as a second shift custodian at the time. And somebody brought in a paper called The Imposter Phenomenon Amongst High Achieving Women. And I instantly identified. And I was so fascinated that I wanted to really understand. So I started looking more deeply in terms of my research at, what are the kind of beliefs and behaviors that would lead us to feel like imposters, fakes, and frauds.
Yeah, well, you mentioned women in the title of that particular paper. Is this something that women more often experience than men, or is it about the same? Do we know?
Yeah, it was originally one of the few psychological phenomena where they originally thought it was unique to one gender, i.e. women, and they quickly determined in a lot of studies that a lot of men feel this way too. For a lot of reasons, I think anybody on the receiving end of stereotypes about competence and intelligence are going to be more susceptible to imposter syndrome, whether that's race or age or disability, or people who are the first generation in their family to go to college are also more susceptible.
I heard you say in one of your lectures, I think it was the TEDx talk that you gave a few years ago, that 70% of people feel this way or suffer from that. That seems like an awful lot of people. How do we know that?
That term gets thrown around, that percentage gets thrown around over the years for decades. It came out of some very original research. And they're really referring to, kind of high achievers. But I think it actually leaves out a lot of people who don't even identify as a high achiever, but feel like an imposter.
I could hear somebody listening to us talk about this say, maybe they're just overly sensitive. This isn't really something that happens. They're just being too soft. What would you say to that person?
Well, it's not the same as low self-esteem. Think of self-esteem as kind of a global sense we have about ourselves, but imposter feelings are very specific to achievement arenas, work, school, business, career. You don't feel like an imposter when you're walking the dog or emptying the dishwasher, but you might in a job interview or when you get a big promotion or you're thinking about scaling your business. There was a study out of the UK that found that 80% of CEOs and 82% of managing directors, that next level down, have had that feeling of being kind of out of their depth and that they're going to be found out. So it's very, very common.
So how do we start to pull the thread here and help people feel this way less often?
I'm really glad you phrased it that way, because it's not about never feeling like an imposter again. Because if you normalize the feelings, if you realize, well, why wouldn't I feel this way? I've never been in this situation before, or I'm in this organization where that kind of fuels self-doubt, like education or medicine. There's certain cultures that are more susceptible. Then you can kind of step back and say, it's really not me, right? There's situational factors that led me here. But also, it's a matter of just talking yourself down faster, to have the insight and the tools when you have a normal imposter moment to talk yourself down off that imposter ledge.
Hearing you say, it's really not me, it sort of popped off this question in my mind. Is this a learned behavior, or is it just something that's innate to a certain group of people, like you said, people who are first generation going to college for the first time, for instance?
Yeah, I don't know that we're born feeling this way, but I do know that there are situational factors. I mean, it's no surprise students are more susceptible. Their knowledge and intellect is literally being tested over and over every day.
And they get a grade for it,
Exactly.
too.
People who work alone are more susceptible. People in certain fields and creative fields. My Angelo said, I've written 11 books, and every time I read another one, I think, uh-oh, I pulled another one over on everyone they're going to find out. Technology, medicine, fields that are very information dense and rapidly changing, you're going to find more people there. So when I say it's not just you, obviously it's an internal experience, but I really invite people to kind of also look around and go, well, it makes sense that I would feel this way.
What's the impact of the person who's then kind of struggling with these feelings? I would imagine they're just nagging at you, clawing at you all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not just a feeling. This is not just an interesting self-help topic. The reason why organizations or universities are so interested in it is because there's costs and consequences, not just for the individual student or employee, but also for the organization. Because if you feel like an imposter, you have to find a way to manage the anxiety of waiting for the other shoe to drop and to avoid being found out. So we do things like kind of fly under the radar. So you might not speak up in meetings, ask questions, go for more challenging opportunities, or you might become a workaholic, constantly over-preparing. You might procrastinate or self-sabotage, show up late to meetings or job hop. I mean, there's lots of ways that it manifests in terms of behaviors that, again, have costs for organizations.
Do you find that you can recall the feelings that you had at that time often, or as you say, you've kind of worked on it through the years to have this experience less often? Where do you sit in that spectrum now?
Yeah, I still have imposter moments. I mean, if Oprah called me tomorrow, I would have an imposter moment. Not that this isn't as good as Oprah.
No offense taken whatsoever.
But I was pitching my book. I had an agent who brought me around to these big publishing houses in New York. And the first meeting, I was really nervous. It was this gorgeous big meeting room overlooking the skyline of New York. There was like 20 people there. And, the irony was not lost on me that I'm having this imposter moment while I'm pitching this book on imposter syndrome.
So, again, how would you encourage people to, if they're listening to this and they say, yeah, I recognize that this is me a little bit, what's the first thing that you would recommend them doing to help them feel a little less this way often?
Well, I would invite them to recognize that feelings are the last to change. People might come to a talk I give, and what they want is to walk in the door feeling like an imposter and walk out the door not feeling like an imposter. And if that doesn't happen, they feel like, oh, I'm a hopeless case. The reality is people who don't feel like imposters are no more intelligent, capable, competent than the rest of us. It's just in the same situation where we might have an imposter moment, they are thinking different thoughts. So what I want them to understand is the only way to stop feeling like an imposter is to stop thinking like an imposter. Because non-imposters, I mean, we're all non-imposters, but people who really don't feel like an imposter, and they're not arrogant, they can still be humble, they think very differently about competence, they think very differently about mistakes, failure, and criticism, and they think differently about fear. And if we can kind of master non-imposter thinking, it would go a long way in overcoming these feelings.
Can you give an example of non-imposter thinking?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the difference between people who feel like imposters are often wounded by even really constructive criticism. Non-imposters see constructive criticism as a gift. They seek it out. They might pay very good money to business coaches or executive coaches to give them information they need to get better.